Hello and welcome. Today we've got Michelle Fielding, and today we are going to be discussing military technology, Elon Musk, midterms, exactly what happened, which was a similar thing in the election 2020, where we all thought Trump was going to win, but actually, Biden got in, even though it is a sting operation. The UN and NATO and how they fit into this military operation. Now, for some of you who are watching this for the first time, I want to let you know that Michelle Fielding channels information. It was very new to me 2 years ago, but I was very open-minded to listen, and I listened. And a lot of the things that she said, Michelle said, actually came true. And one of the things is when she said that Trump's going to not step down, but is going to step back in this sting operation when Biden was going to take over as a sting, even though he could be secretly working, for the White Hats, because we know that's not Joe Biden. And nobody was talking about that. Only Michelle Fielding was saying that she got slandered, but that happened and she was right. She spoke about Elon Musk being, taking over, not taking over, sorry, but Elon Musk being the one to implement Starlink. Now, this was way before Starlink came into the picture, way before Elon Musk came into the picture. She also said that we are going to have quantum phones, which is called quantum generation. And a year later, we have Elon Musk saying that if Google and Apple remove Twitter, he will be making his own phones. So there's a lot here that, Michelle is very credible. A lot of the information that she says, some truthers take it and claim it's theirs, but I'm telling you, this is Michelle Fielding's information. She's very credible, and I'm in no way being biased because she's my good friend. This is, I really do believe that this is fantastic information, and I can't wait to hear what she's got today. She's very eager to tell me what's going on, but I said to her, Michelle, I want to hear it the first time with the viewers, because I want to naturally write down questions as she's speaking so that I'm thinking the same as the viewers, so that we could enjoy this interview and enjoy this information that she's about to tell us. Now, just before we begin, you can subscribe to my Rumble channel, nvtvnews.com, and to nicholasfeniarmin.com for my free email updates. Michelle, thank you for joining me. How are you, first of all, and what have you been up to?
Hi, Nick. So I've been quite busy this week. I've been on the Truthathon with Lewis Herms, which was a big, long event on Saturday. And I appeared on that for about 40 minutes, I think it was. And I've also, as you've just been saying in your introduction, just been looking all around why we might have had the outcome, that came out in the midterm elections.
Absolutely. Now, the other thing that I wanted to say, since you brought that up, and I should have said as well in the intro, is that months before the midterm elections, you were telling me that you were getting that the midterms was going to be like, a very close call, like almost a 50-50 is what we basically saw. And then I said, wow, they're going to cheat again. I thought they had this under wraps. And you said, well, actually, the White Hats are in control of what's going to happen in order to bring both parties to the center in some strategic way where it will create a hung government, or it could be something similar to that, where, it's going to work for the people. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so basically my midterm election video talks about the things that you've just said. And today what we're going to be looking at is why they are needing to not bring in the election results like we expected, and why it's all taking so long. And I mean, some of the reasons we already know, because they could have those results immediately if they wanted them. They're watching everything all the time. Doesn't make any sense that, particularly on our second time around, we still don't seem to have those results to hand in an absolute way. So I wanted to find out what the delay is. What is the strategy? Why does this keep happening? And so that's basically what I've got for you today. They were sort of showing me in my visions that it was still something to do with the technology of Starlink. which we did talk about at the last election. I said to you about a year ago when we talked about the quantum generation, that the delays with finding election results were because they were still trying to get the technologies up to speed so that when they do eventually turn everything around, we're ready to go with the new system. So they're still telling me that that's what's going on right now. And so shall I just start with the questions and the answers?
Yeah,
Nick?
let's do our own classic way. I'll just let you go through all the questions and answers. And I won't interrupt you unless very necessary. But I will just be taking notes and questions for at the end.
So what I kept getting in my mind was that cue drop where they keep saying military is the only way. And what they were showing me was, instead of us thinking that that was necessarily boots on the ground, it was something more to do with the military above us in the sense of this Starlink infrastructure. So I said to them, the recent midterms, they just felt to me like they were a rerun of the 2020 distraction. And they said that, yes, it's all being designed to provide a distraction whilst the higher forces get everything lined up. And I said to them, like lined up, what do you mean lined up? What are they lining up? Do you mean Starlink? And they said yes. And then I said to them, so what is it they're lining up? Is it the actual infrastructure of the Starlink, or is it the programming that's needed in order to run it? And they actually said both things. So then I asked them, so what do you mean lined up? What does that mean exactly? And they said to me that the infrastructure is being built out. So, for example, the physical communication satellites, both in space and on the ground, they are being built out. So we know about those. Those are the things that Elon Musk is putting up into space. But they said the second thing is it's the actual software programs that are in some cases still being written. And I said, could they explain what they mean by that? And they mentioned to me at that point about something called Web 5/Web 7. And I said, is it Web 5 or Web 7? And they said it's both. So I was introduced to Web 5, Web 7 about 3 months ago when somebody sent me an article about Jack Dorsey, actually. Now, we talked about Jack Dorsey earlier in the year in April, when I'd said at that point that he had strategically left Twitter so that Musk could come in and then obviously dismiss the board, and that in the meantime, Jack Dorsey was working on something else in the background. And at that point, I had said that I thought he was working with Trump. So then somebody sent me something explaining about Web 5, just Web 5 actually. And when I looked at it, it seemed to be suggesting that Jack Dorsey was working on it. So I pulled up some information about Web 5, there isn't a lot actually on the internet. They're saying to me, first of all, if I explain the difference between Web 3 and Web 5. So Web 3 is what we are currently building, or what we currently understand is being written for our current banking system with the blockchain. So if you go into any technology forums or chat rooms, you'll see them talking about setting up Web 3 and the difficulties and the advancements and how they're getting on with it and how they're going to secure this decentralized kind of banking system and communication system using Web 3. So the difference between Web 3 and Web 5, I wanted to know what that was. And they're saying that Web 3 is a decentralized internet that can give users control over their information. And the difference between Web 3 and Web 5 and this is just a very basic understanding, is that at Web 5, we will have a unique password, if you like, and that password will open everything. So instead of us having to have a password for every app and every bank account and every application that we've got on our laptop or phone, we'll just have this one ID. And so Web 5 is what they seem to be, this is how they seem to be creating this ID system, is through the Web 5. So then I started asking some questions around this. I said, what will these programs be written for, and what will their function be? And they said to me that Web 5/7 is a superior military software that will run Starlink and is overseen by the Space Force. And they said to me that this technology at the level of Web 3, which I just explained to everybody, that's where we are currently. So to all intents and purposes, what we're being shown right now is that Web 3 is still being written and set up. And they said to me that the technology at the level of this Web 3, the current system which is being set up on the ground, has been overtaken by the good guys, the white hat military, and the alliance. And they're saying to me that it is a superior program which will create a one key code or ID for each individual, which will allow them access to everything in their life in a safe, encoded, transparent way. And they said it will be things like personal banking, which will be done direct with Starlink. And they put in brackets, there'll be no banks. Internet, communications, health, education, travel, future healing technology, and power. So I said to them, so this Web 3, was it infiltrated by the black hats and the deep state? And they said to me that in fact, the Web 3, which is the system that we currently know about on the ground, it was actually designed by the deep state. And it was designed to operate all the previous things that I've just mentioned, all the utilities and the operations, but it was designed at that point and at that level with the focus of controlling and manipulating the people. But now they're saying it has been, to the greater extent, taken over by the white hats, even if it is not entirely clear or apparent at this time. They're saying that in most cases, the dark storylines of censorship and programmed media is being allowed to awaken the people to what they don't want. So when we're hearing about these systems going to be able to control us, and credit scoring and cryptocurrencies that are going to collapse, we could actually see that. I'm not saying that we might not see that. And that's not because that's what's ahead of us permanently. It's because that is what might be needed in order for the people to wake up. But over and above that is a system that's much more secure and safe. But in the meantime, you might see some of those things playing out, but they're not intended for the longer term. They said that the superior programming of Web 5/7 has locked out the deep state entirely. And people will have their new key for life, and it cannot be hacked. They said the events on the ground are to distract the masses, i.e. the election results and other things that are going on right now. All these events are to distract the masses as the final stages of the life-changing technology is put into place. They're saying that Starlink connectivity is overseen by Space Force, and it will revolutionize every aspect of Earth's existence, including military and police operations. They said that all countries will need to be signed in before this technology can go fully live. And then at that point, governments, banks, if they're still there at that point, and any outdated bureaucratic organizations, they can and will be collapsed, as the Starlink will then take over the reins. They're saying that the outcries about the election security and procedures will soon be outdated and obsolete, as will our ability to travel, because this is going to change completely with no borders or visa requirements. They're saying that the Starlink will oversee all movements safely and effectively. So then I said to them, so the only way is the military, i.e. that Q drop. Are you saying that this refers to the military Web 5, Web 7 Starlink? And they said yes. So whereas we've been thinking the only way is military is boots on the ground, and I'm not saying that we're not going to have that as well, but they seem to be saying to me that the only way is military might actually be the infrastructure above us. So we might again be looking in the wrong direction. So I said to them again, so it doesn't mean literal troops on the ground? And they said no. They said the future new world is a technological world overseen by a white hat powerhouse of military commander-in-chiefs. Politics will not be the focus of how this technology is operated. Its precepts are for the freedoms, safety, and sovereignty of citizens and of humanity. And it has overwritten the dark intentions of control from when it was intercepted from the deep state. So then I said, will this Web 5, Web 7 software, will it run, with the quantum phones and laptops that we've been hearing about? And they said, yes. They said, currently, the resources for the public to work with Web 5 or Web 7 are not yet in circulation because they're being tested. They said that Musk, Dorsey, McAfee, Snowden, and Assange are some of the powerhouse names working behind the scenes to create this open source technology. So then I said, the personal key or the personal ID that you mentioned, I said, what is that? Is it like a passcode or is it like a password? What is it? They said to me that it is a one-time code or key that is encrypted to the individual user, and you will use it for everything in your life. So I said to them, so it's a little bit like in the UK, we have something called a national insurance number. which we're given at birth, and then that carries through our entire life, or perhaps a tax identity number. I said, is it kind of like that? But I said, is it like in a unique format that can't be hacked? And they said, yes. And I said, what will this personal key, this ID, what will it be able to operate? And they said, everything. They said finances, banking, health, education, power, travel, your car, your laptop, everything. And then I obviously wanted to know, so is it going to be safe and secure? And they said, yes, it's unhackable, it's unique, it's safe, and it's promoting freedom of speech, travel, and lifestyle. So then I wanted to know when this was coming. When is it currently anticipated to be rolled out to the masses? And they said that estimates at this time are 2026. So that doesn't mean that necessarily everything will be in place by 2026, but we might start seeing perhaps even the people talking about Web 5, Web 7 by then. They did say there will be much progress before that time, with prototypes being made available to countries involved in BRICS, for example, or those forging ahead with the centralized banking in the form of digital currency and regulated by the Starlink system of connectivity. The CBDCs that most people have been talking about, we're talking about centralized banking, which is connected to the Starlink. And we've talked about that lots of times in previous videos, so I don't really want to go over that again today. Now, I then asked them, Musk has said that he's moving his second headquarters to Texas. And I said, is this so that he can work more closely with the military on this Starlink Web 5, Web 7 program? And they said partly, but also there are underground tunnels in that region which allow for experiments with new travel technologies. They said travel between continents in those tunnels is so progressive that it will take less than an hour to travel from one side of the earth to the other in coming years. And they said that air travel in its current form will all but cease. I asked them, is Musk developing like flying cars? And they said that Musk and other tech giants are designing many new forms of transport, including flying cars, drone-type tablets, which will move up to 2 people locally from like A to B, plus trains with magnetic propulsion. They said that driverless cars will become the norm in the next 20 years, and that your unique key and ID will run your new high-tech car and vehicle or your object of flight. And I said, object of flight. And they said, you will have many new flying technologies that you can stand on, sit on, or even lie on, and it will get you from A to B in your neighborhood. They said that you will also be able to maneuver your flying transport or your car through thought via your unique key or ID device. So then I said, will this be via an implanted device, this key? And they said, no, it's more likely going to be wearable tech, a bit like a smartwatch or a 3D virtual reality headset. They said it's not exactly as you would understand it at this time, but it's going to be similar. So whatever we currently understand to be virtual reality or a smartwatch, they're saying it's going to be similar to those things, but it's not necessarily something we currently understand or know about. And they said that prototypes are already available and being tested in China and Texas. And they did say that there's a high-speed tunnel which connects the USA with China. So then I wanted to know, is there going to be like a one world military? And they said not exactly. They said the Starlink will create a unified framework which all countries can sign into. And by signing into it, it provides them with superior communications for the safe protection of their geographical region. They said again, as they've said to us a few times, that regions will be divided up by north, east, south, and west. So for military purposes, the world will look like chunks of north, east, south, or west. And each of those locations will be overseen by a commander-in-chief. They said that land masses will be divided up differently for the sake of the military protection procedures. And they said that Antarctica and the Arctic are major military stations or hubs where much of Web 5 and 7 is being developed and maintained. So then I went on to talk about some months ago, they told me that Musk is going to create a new social network. And so I wanted to ask them, is the X app, is this the new social network that they were telling me about 5 or 6 months ago? There's actually a video, you can find an old video of that I've done. And they said, actually, the X app, no, that's not the new social network. They said that the new social network is very advanced compared to what is currently available. And he will link it to the new quantum phones and Starlink Web 5, Web 7 in the future. And so then I wanted to know, so what will this X app do? And is that the final name? They said the final name is actually undecided, and that the X app will run a multi-function social network platform, unlike platforms currently in operation, and it will have distinct new functions, and that these are still being designed and trialed behind the scenes. They said, but virtual reality and non-fungible tokens will play a big part in this network's design. Now, if people haven't heard what non-fungible token is, I've only just learned about this recently, but a non-fungible token, or an NFT, is a unique digital identifier that, again, cannot be copied, substituted, or subdivided, and is recorded in the blockchain. And it gives you, it certifies then that something is authentic and that that person or that thing has ownership. So again, it's another way of creating like this ID or code system. So I'm not an expert in that, but I just thought I'd read that out for people, because That report is actually quite fat. That's all the stuff on NFT, but if you want to go and look that up. So they're saying that this new platform will be like a virtual reality, and that these non-fungible tokens are going to play a big part in that new social network. And you will virtually be able to go in and socialize and invent and invest inside this new social network. And it will be the metaverse in full spectrum. The metaverse, I've got a little definition here, is a vision of what many in the computer industry believe is the next iteration of the internet, a single, shared, immersive, persistent 3D virtual space where humans experience life in ways that they could not in the physical world. So they're saying that this is what the new network is going to, the new social network that he's creating, which I understand is called Dojo. And I only just found that out last night. I found it somewhere that they were talking about how they're making the chips to be able to run this new social network. And it's called Dojo. And that's all I know for now. So then I wanted to know, the 5G towers that we've currently got all around us, are they going to work with this new Starlink once it gets to Web 5, Web 7? When it becomes active, what's going to happen with the 5G? And will these 5G towers, I want to know, are they going to work with this Web 5, Web 7? And they said, no, not exactly. They said the Web 5, Web 7 will be able to create a Tesla frequency modulation through some of its infrastructure. And this will make 5G/6G obsolete. So they've been telling me for some time that Starlink will be able to run smart cities in the sense that it'll be able to run a healing modulation through the city. So I said, so is healing frequency, is it going to be part of this infrastructure, this Starlink? And they said, yes, exactly. It's one of the main components going forward, which they're going to use to heal and soothe humanity. So then I said, does the Web 5, Web 7, does it equate to like being in the 5th dimension or the 7th dimension? If it's able to modulate this frequency, is it able to sort of mimic or equate to us living in 5th or 7th dimension from a spiritual point of view, from our own personal vibration or development, spiritual development? And they said not exactly, because as spiritual dimensions are activated, they said not exactly, because spiritual dimensions are activated from an internal perspective of us connecting within. So this external frequency is not going to change what we're able to do from our own internal work. They said, however, the external system of the Starlink connectivity, it will produce a safer, cleaner world for humanity, which will only assist them in calming their central nervous systems, which leads to more spiritual development. But then I wanted to know, will Starlink, Web 5, Web 7, will it be able to stop future bioweapon attacks? And they said to me, that as more and more locations are put onto the new superior ID system, then all intentions will be observed and fully known. And the movement of classified dangerous materials, for example, will not be able to be moved without the system being alerted. Then I wanted to ask about Mars. When Musk talks about Mars, I wanted to know, is he actually talking about the planet Mars, or is he talking about something called the Military Auxiliary Radio System? The Military Auxiliary Radio System is like an emergency broadcast system where you use people on the ground, you train people on the ground that in an emergency, they could say, set up a CB radio station or something like that. So I asked them, when Musk talks about Mars, is he talking about this military auxiliary radio system? Is it like a code? Or is he actually talking about the planet Mars? And they said he means both, that he is working behind the scenes on both of those projects. And I said, what's the purpose of that? They said the Mars system, as in this, is a backup emergency broadcast system. And Mars as a planet is something that Musk has got a personal interest in. It's like a hobby for him. And they said to me, it's because he wants to take his kids there for a holiday in the future, which I thought was quite funny. So then I said, this key, this ID, I said, is this what Juan O'Savin is referring to when he says that the outcome won't be for everybody? And they said, no, he is referring to how Trump will not be president in the traditional sense going forward. So that's not to say he isn't going to have a significant role, but he won't necessarily be called president, going forward. Then I said, so who knows about this Web 5 and Web 7? Because I could only find 2 pages to print out about it. And they said that this is still, to the greater extent, being developed and trialled, and it's on a need-to-know basis within the White Hat Military Alliance. So then I said to them, the new banking, tax controls, visa controls, things like that across nations, is this all going to be part of this Starlink Web 5, Web 7? They said yes and no. They said banks won't be necessary in the traditional sense by the time Web 5, Web 7 is rolled out. However, they said that in the interim, measures to secure data on people's locations and assets and productivity are being captured manually and digitally to build up the database functions and programs so that we can eventually move everything from the Web 3 to the Web 5. I said to them, does the Web 5, Web 7 still use blockchain? Because we know that the Web 3 uses blockchain. And they said yes and no. They said it does use the blockchain. Also, it uses decentralized programming and personal ID or keys, which are called lifetime ID or keys. they said that Web3 does not have this unique ID in place, which will allow for a lifetime passcode or key that you will use for everything. And they said, so there'll be no more need for Michelle 1234. They were making a little joke because I can never remember my passwords. So that you won't need to do that anymore. You won't need to be worrying about making up, Nick Veniamin 1234 anymore. Oh, I've just given them your password.
Yeah, don't tell everybody.
So then I said, so what are the banks currently doing right now? And they said that banks are currently being trained on switching to the digital currency worldwide. And they said, as this technology is developed, people will speak directly to Starlink with their quantum technology and later on with their quantum key or ID. So you won't need the bank in the future. So you'll just have your number, your quantum, whatever it is, and you'll just speak straight to Starlink. You won't need that bank in the middle. It will kind of like replace your bank account number, I suppose. They said that for the banks to survive in any form, they need to move towards these non-fungible tokens and or digital stroke cryptocurrency, which must be regulated and backed by assets like gold, silver, or platinum. So you might have some specialist banks that remain, but they will have to have those things in place. And then I said, do the black hats have any control over the current banking system at the Web3 program level? That's where we are at the moment. And they said that in some instances, they do. But they said it is rapidly being set up to identify them through the progress of the integrated Starlink system. So they're still working on sort of finding those people with, that are in that Web3. And they said they're doing it through things like people's driving license, because, now your driving license and everything has to have these special holograms on them. Your passport has to have a special hologram on it, your medical records, and they said even your vet records. And I'm aware of this at the moment because I'm trying to move pets around through different countries, and the paperwork and admin for it is just incredibly high level. And so what they're saying is that they're using all this data at the moment, and all these frustrations we're having with getting visas and moving around into different places is them doing that deliberately. So while people is kind of captured in locations, they're picking up their data. It's helping them to get the data on board. So at the moment, it's an annoying process, but eventually once you get all that data on, they can then switch it up to the Web 5, Web 7 and free everybody up. It's probably unlikely in the future we're going to have passports, driving licenses or anything, because we're just going to have that unique code. They said the deep state are slowly being squeezed out of their corrupt activities, like avoiding like tax and their trafficking and their drugs, etc. They're basically going to rewrite their own program that the deep state had and lock them out of it. So when they were showing me the visions before I got to channel this down, they were literally kind of showing me that. Like you've got this one level with the deep state in it, and then you've got this brand new level where they're locking them out. The software is locking them out. So then, do you want me to carry on, Nick, with...
Yeah, please do.
Okay. So then about 2 or 3 months ago, I was listening to Emily, who runs QSI, and that is like a crypto channel, crypto stroke spiritual channel on Telegram. And she had this very good interview where she was talking to someone from the United Nations. And we didn't see his face, but he was basically saying at that point that the UN had been switched around. It was white hats. They were switching it to white hats. So anyone who doesn't know what the United Nations is like a peace organization. It was set up in order to go into areas if there was war or disaster, and essentially it's supposed to be boots on the ground that are supposed to help keep the peace and to move around rescue items like water, food, that sort of thing. And on my notes that I found online, they said that there are 5 countries that are in the United Nations. And who did they say they are? So they are saying that this was set up in 1945 and that the people inside of the UN are China, France, Russia, the UK, and the United States. And they're saying that the United Nations, for anybody who doesn't know what it does, it's an international organization that was founded in 1945 after the Second World War. And it's committed to maintaining international peace and security, developing friendly relations among nations, and promoting social progress, better living standards, and human rights. So I just wanted to look all around, is that actually the case? Is that what they've actually been doing? Have they been run by the black hats or the white hats, and where are we up to? Because my understanding is that there's been a lot of deep state within the United Nations, or that's what I've been hearing on different podcasts. So I asked them, have bad players now been removed from the United Nations? And can you tell me, is it going to rebrand, once these bad players are sort of moved out, if they're being moved out? And they said that the United Nations has not been a beacon of light or hope in the past, despite the fact it was originally set up to enable peaceful transitions for its member states. They said that many dark operations, like money laundering and political anomalies, can be attributed to the organization called the United Nations, like from the past. However, in more recent years, since the inception of Donald J. Trump and the White Hats and Alliance, a change has been occurring with sleeper cells working from the inside hubs of this vast organization. They have digitally been identifying where resources have been allocated, and through the Starlink quantum connectivity, have been able to track the routes of personnel in their communications and any covert operations for bad intention have been uncovered. Working from the inside of the organization, the belly of the organization is what they called it, a shift and a turnaround is starting to gain momentum. Bad players are being identified and effectively released from the organization, or they are being tracked covertly so that they lead the White Hats and the Alliance to the other bad players who are often government or NGO, non-government organization, employees or representatives who may be based in other countries or locations. Funds have been seen to have been used inappropriately, and human trafficking and abuse of women, men, and children has, in some cases, been uncovered. Large rings of paedophiles have also been tagged. At the moment, the United Nations is still in the process of using the Starlink tracking system to locate the perpetrators. The upper management of the UN has been flipped to a white hat operation. So then I said, so is the UN then in that case, is it going to continue like going forward? And they said that the UN will continue as it is essentially an organization dedicated in principle to peace and freedom for humanity. And they said, once all the bad players have done their part in helping the white hats to find the trafficking lines, the money laundering hubs, and the corrupt officials, then the organization will be running for the good of humanity, which was its original intended purpose until a few bad players infiltrated it in 1946 and 47. So I said, how much is this organization now under white hat control? They said, in reality, it is now entirely under white hat control operationally. The cleaning up process is totally managed and controlled by the white hats. I said, do the white hats of the United Nations have a role in overseeing the Starlink system going forward? And they said no. They said the Starlink infrastructure and programming and software, which we've been talking about today, is only available to very specialist personnel in the military, and it is an area of the military that is highly classified. I said, does the UN work with the white hat military? And they said at this point in time, they do. Then I said, how will the UN be funded going forward? They said that each member state will fund its membership within the UN, and a framework of creating peace in times of war, disaster, and economic crisis will be set up. The funding will be used for that, And the funding setup has been arranged so that each member state will pay in proportion to the size of their population and land mass. So in the future, the world from a military and geographical standpoint will be divided up, like we said, into northeast, southwest. And so each of those regions will then contribute on an equal basis in terms of, you're either in the north or the east. And so whoever lands in that space, they will have to pay an equal amount of money. So they said that each region will have to contribute on an equal basis in terms of monetary contribution, and all of them within that concept will have equal status and stature politically in the operations of the UN. I said, will more countries join the UN? They said the world will geographically be split up by the military teams into areas, like we've just explained, and that all countries within those geographical regions will have access to the UN if that's what they choose to do. Then I said to them, in what way does the UN differ from the white hat personnel within the military that are operating Starlink? In what way is their role different? They said that the Starlink is overseen by military personnel who are largely involved, like behind the scenes, in remote classified locations, whereas the white hat UN, they said, are military and administrative personnel, but they are with boots on the ground. So the Starlink personnel are classified and in the background, but the UN military are boots on the ground and visible. They've got visible roles in terms of helping in times of disaster or crisis. They are required to be visibly working with and for the people, creating a culture of operational peace and a safe haven. So then finally, I just wanted to look at NATO. So NATO, for those people that don't know what NATO is, it stands for the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and it's an intergovernmental military alliance between 30 member states. There's quite a lot of them, so I'll just hold that up. People can hold that screen at some point if they want to check out the countries.
If they'd like to pause, yeah.
Yeah, if they want to pause. And basically, NATO consists of 30 member states from North America and Europe. And the Article 5 of the treaty states that if an armed attack occurs against one of these member states, it should be considered an attack against all the members, and other members will then assist the attacked member with armed force if necessary. So I wanted to know, is NATO, a black hat organization or a white hat organization now? Because we haven't heard good things about NATO either. So they said to me that in the past, NATO has been run in an authoritarian top-down hierarchy, which has been open to abuses of power, both internally and in its handling of external situations. They said it has had an overwhelming percentage of dark controllers within its organizational structure until quite recently. They said that an abrupt and highly organized exercise to clean out the corruption within NATO has been implemented with force. They said the military have recently infiltrated the NATO management hierarchy and they've rapidly dismantled it. So I said, this was news to me. I said, is NATO then, is it now a white hat organization? They said to the greater extent, NATO has been restructured over the past 6 years from the inside out. They said that its connections with organizations like the CIA, FBI, MI6 and MI5 have been overhauled completely. And they said that the tentacles of corruption, they had gone far and wide. They were like everywhere. And so an abrupt and vigorous infiltration was necessary to take them by surprise. They said a lot of these operations were successfully carried out while the world was under lockdown. They said there was also a big cleanup within GCHQ. GCHQ is in the UK, in Cheltenham, Gloucestershire, and it's the headquarters of military intelligence and communications within the UK. Now, I hadn't asked about that, but they've just slotted that in. So they wanted us to know that. So it would appear, based on them just slotting that in without me asking, that maybe GCHQ, which is essentially a military-run organisation, might have been infiltrated by some bad players. So finally, I said, will NATO continue in the future? Because we've been told that the UN will. Now, they said that in the future, it's unlikely that NATO is going to continue in its current format. They said that the military will be running the world in the future, like we've been talking about today, via the Starlink infrastructure, and it may become cumbersome to maintain NATO as an additional entity longer term. So maybe they're just using NATO, like they were explaining with the UN at the moment, just to track people. Perhaps they've gone in, they've got white hat control, and now they're just like watching the players in there to see where they're going, what they're doing. They're finding the bad players throughout the world. Once they've done that cleanup operation, they might just shut it all down and move it, I think, onto the Starlink.
Wow, very interesting, Michelle. Some people think this sounds all like, especially when we talk about the technology, it sounds like New World Order. But you've really said many times that this is about freedom, it's about peace. And I think that we need to have an open mind where we're going technologically, because we've been so suppressed from technology and moving forward technologically. And we can't help evolve anyway, especially when we look at something like Atlantis, where they had very, very high tech. And, if we're going to get rid of the deep state, which is who they got rid of in the first place, we should be going back to that. Back to freedom, back to peace, back to higher consciousness, where what Atlantis was, and not doing things or creating things for money, but simply to give back to the community, to create, to do things with love. That's why we see the Tartarian buildings look amazing. And today we have buildings that look very plain and boring, because everything is to do with money. So I'm not going to ask you too much on that. Now, I want to talk about 2024, about Trump becoming president. So you reckon that's optics, that's just distractions, because maybe the presidency format and having vice presidents, etc., maybe that's part of the old system. It will be outdated, but Trump will still be, in principle, the general above of all of this going on top of the military. Is that what you think?
So I think the role of Trump right now, and has always been, to bring down the political structures of the two-party system so that we can collapse it into one party, we the people, and we can perhaps have this new voting system, which we've been talking about, you and I, for a couple of years. And then Trump will either remain as a commander-in-chief, or, he may hand over the reins to someone younger. At the moment they're showing or trying to say that there's an argument or some sort of disagreement between, say, him and Ron DeSantis. But again, I think that's all a distraction. And I think they're actually working together, perhaps so that in the future, maybe Ron DeSantis will take the reins. So I don't know what Trump personally wants to do. When I feel into his energy, he might not be wanting to have a lead role once this is all sorted out. Maybe his job description was to come in at this time, to turn it all around. And then when he's done that, he can go back to being retired and enjoying the life that he had before. So I'm not certain that he would even want to be running it, in the future, once it's all done and dusted. I feel from his energy that he's just come in to do a task right now, and then he'd be quite happy to hand over the reins to somebody else. That's how I actually feel. And as they've been explaining to me for some time, there will be like a commander in chief. So maybe he will take that role. He already has that role, but perhaps he'll have a role sort of like that in the future, but perhaps not so involved as he's needed to be in the last few years. That's what I'm thinking is going to happen.
Now, Trump's a businessman. He made Truth Social platform for the truth to come out. He called it Truth Social. It's not something you would call to put something to market. It's for an example, we've had MySpace, Facebook, Twitter. They've got maybe some funky names to a brand that you would call, but something like Truth Social is to attract the truth. So would you say that because there's the Starlink is Starlink, and I think you mentioned something about Elon Musk about producing a network where everything's going to be tied into that in the Web 5.7, and we will have social media there on a different level, and it won't be like it is today. Maybe he already knew that Truth Social is something temporary within 5 years or something like that, just to get people distracted and wake them up as part of the optics, part of the devolution, part of the distraction. And like with what you said, with all of this fear porn that the media is pushing, that the white hats are in control of, is to get people to wake up so that they know what they don't want. Exactly. So would you say that Truth Social is something temporary?
Actually, I think that might be possible. And I think that the new network that will take over everything will be this Elon Musk social network that he's building in the background. And I wouldn't be surprised if that overtakes everything, Facebook, YouTube, everything. I think it's just going to be an all singing, all dancing network that we probably haven't seen before. I do feel, though, that the white hats are in all of those organizations already. And even though people are being censored and what have you, and fact checked, that's again all part of the waking people up. It's all part of this distraction, this narrative, while we're getting things ready in the background.
Of course. Now, a lot I've been listening to a lot of people, when they comment about Elon Musk, and they say, we don't want Elon Musk to be in control. It's owned by one man, and this is not good. And, explain to us, why don't you explain to us that? Because people are very confused. They think that Elon Musk is going to own it. They don't understand that he is somebody that's working on a very small piece under the military, and he's just used as the forefront to bring it to the public.
So if you go back and look at my videos during the summer, I did quite a lot on Elon Musk, as you probably know. And what they told me, I did actually ask if he was the head of the White Hats. And they told me that he wasn't the head of the White Hats, but he was equal in stature to the head of the White Hats, whoever that may be. And that he does get referred to by the military teams and by the White Hats on an equal basis. So he's not actually running it all. It's more like he is the person that is taking it forward, like the salesman, if you like, the marketing man. Because people essentially, I think, trust him and his brand. And so he's got the ideal leadership qualities in that sense, in order to be able to bring all these new products to market without them being seen as military, necessarily anything to do with politics or the military. And it's only actually quite recently that we're starting to see now that the two things are joining together. But for the past year, that's not been the case. They've kept his role of working with the military quite separate. But yesterday, I did find this article where they're saying that SpaceX is rolling out a new business line focused on military satellite services, and it's called Starshield. And that's the information I found on that yesterday. So this is really the first time that I've seen it where they've linked him in with the military, but he's not like the leader of it. Mm-hmm. He's working in conjunction with them because his skills merge very well with what they're trying to do with the White Hat plan.
Now, you mentioned that this system will start to, the Web 5 and 7 will start to take place around 2026. Now, a lot of people are thinking, I don't want to wait that long. I'm frustrated. Can you explain what we could see from now until 2026? Because what I believe is, although we might see we might see so many great things happen 26 onwards, there are still great things that are going to happen, I believe, from now until 2026. And we have so much to look forward, and especially knowing that we are going in the right direction.
So they did say that between now and 2026, that there would still be a lot of progress. They said that there will be much progress before that time, with prototypes being made available to countries that are involved in the BRICS. So maybe the incentive for people to join the new NESARA-GESARA system might be, that they get some of these technological Web 5, Web 7 products before others. Maybe that's how they're going to do it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. The other thing is, finally, you mentioned about flying cars. Okay. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be so smart. It's going to drive for you, etc. How about someone like me who loves supercars, who loves driving? I like engine cars. I'm a typical guy in that category. I love it. Am I going to be called an old-fashioned grandfather one day?
Well, you might be called that one day, but I think that you'll still be able to have fast cars, because if they're all driverless, I would imagine they're all on some sort of tech highway. And so you will be able to go faster because the computers will know where every other car is. And so you won't be having collisions anymore. So you'll literally be able to go faster because they'll know when to stop and start and what's around them.
But I like driving them.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll still be able to physically drive it, but the computer will know what's around you. And maybe you'll be able to go faster because the computer will be able to alert you if there's something ahead, or it might be able to brake on your behalf if there was an emergency. That's how I kind of see it going.
Now, you mentioned also about the tunnels where we'll be able to travel from one side of the earth to another side of the earth. I mean, that sounds absolutely amazing. That sounds like it would change our lives. It would literally change our lives. That means that people in the United States could go to Japan to work if it takes them just 1 hour. I mean, that would really unite the whole world, really.
And it means that you could date anybody in the world, Nick. And
so that gives me more options.
Give you more options, and you could be with them within the hour.
It sounds amazing. And there'll be no holiday. So did you say so? Tell me what would happen to mainstream airlines like airplanes.
Well, they said that there won't be any need for them in the future. So I'm assuming there's going to be a different type of travel that people will prefer. Perhaps this new tunnel system that they're talking about with the trains will be faster than the airline. So it might be a natural progression that people move towards that. And then airlines just aren't necessary anymore, maybe.
And when do you think that will be ready? When do you think we'll actually start going to the other side of the planet in an hour?
Well, I think the main thing is we have to clean up what's going on first visually for everybody, so everyone knows exactly where we are. We'll get people on the same page, maybe. So I don't think we're going to be seeing that for everyone like tomorrow, but maybe, I mean, who knows? I mean, look at Twitter and what's happened in the last 6 months. It's just the whole narrative is flipped so fast, so fast. So we never know. Once these things start getting rolled out, can change the narrative very, very quickly. So who knows?
The future generations to come will be so used to going to the other side of the world in an hour if this happens. And when we tell them that we sat in airplanes for 11 hours, uncomfortable seats, really bad food, and all this security,
yes,
they will actually understand because we don't understand, because we're so immune into the matrix. We still don't understand quite yet. We're still programmed. We still think this is normal, but they will look back and think you lived like a slave.
Yeah. Particularly with airport security, it takes you longer to go through security and customs and baggage claim than it does to, than the whole flight. The flight is quicker than all the things at each end.
But can you see the satanic suffering that the deep state have unnecessarily put us through when we could have had this since the days of Atlantis?
Exactly. Yeah.
It's a disgrace when you think about how far we could have gone instead of wasting our time in trying to defeat a dark group of beings. It's absolutely a disgrace.
That's why I think that the Web 5, Web 7 tech with the passcode, that's what's going to free everything up. People are being shown it at the moment as a system of control, but that's just to wake people up. It actually is a system of freedom because it's going to be overseen by the military. It's not going to be overseen by any government leaders. And we also understand from previous interviews that it will monitor itself. So if any country or region tried to use it for a controlling purpose, the rest of the system would know, it would be alerted, and it would be shut down. So, I think that these IDs would just free up a lot of time. We'd just be able to go straight through an airport or a train station or whatever it is that we have at that moment. And you won't have all this, like you were saying, this enslaved system that we have right now. We actually already have an enslaved system.
Of course. I mean, the deep state have taken IDs and identity to a next level because they want to track us. They want to enslave us. When we're talking about passports, driver license, visas, because at the end of the day, we're one, we're one. We're humans. So, who are we protecting each other from? Why all the borders, really? If we were to be just one unity. Now, you say that to some people and they think New World Order. Now, but New World Order is enslavement. But the way but we can have unity, which is somewhat people call New World Order, but it isn't. It's unity. But what makes it different than the New World Order? That is complete freedom, complete peace, complete. Everything is to do with it's got nothing to do with money. We can do whatever we want. There's flexibility to do whatever we want. And it works for the people, for the citizens, like what you said. That will be the focus, not political narratives.
Well, the world wasn't made with postcodes. And the whole time you were speaking about the system that we currently have, or this fear system that everyone's been saying we're moving into, they've been saying it's been intercepted. They kept shouting it the whole time we were speaking. It's been intercepted. So they're telling us that there was potentially the intention to have a Web3 where they could control money and movement and freedoms and penalize you. And I'm not saying that you won't see some of that in the coming months because it's to wake people up. Mm-hmm. But they've been saying all the time you've been talking, intercepted. So I believe that system of control has been overtaken and that the programming has completely locked out the deep state. They can no longer, and especially when we get those codes and those keys that are unique to us, it will create so much freedoms, in my opinion, because the way that I've been taught now for 2.5 years about this Starlink, that's all they've ever expressed to me, is that it's a system for freedom and not for control.
Absolutely. Now, some of the viewers, and I've heard this before, and I have to just clarify this, they're saying, who is she getting this information from? As in Michelle Fielding, who is they? Who is she channeling to? Now, one of the things that the governments do not want us to know is the power of the human brain, is that when we meditate, we can our brains produce DMT naturally. We get this in plant medicines called magic mushrooms, which are a pure plant medicine that our ancient ancestors used to force the pineal gland to open. And DMT forces the pineal gland to open. And we all have this ability, and we all have the ability to produce DMT naturally through meditation. And this allows the pineal gland to open, and we can access parallel universes, and we can ask questions, and we have visions. So I just wanted to clarify that as well. Now, my last and final question, Michelle, is, will the world ever find out what's gone on with everything that we've discussed today, with the fact that they've been enslaved? I mean, that personally, I hope that this is not just going to be a gradual process, an ongoing gradual process, until we reach the level that we've been speaking about today, and they just didn't really realize the change. They have to be told. I really feel that the way we were told, where we watched The Fall of the Cabal, we did the research, we watched different documentaries, we became independent researchers. I really feel that they have to also go through that too. Now, it might be the case that they will go through that naturally, and they want to do their own research naturally because they will become curious as they awaken. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, when you were speaking, they were giving me the feeling that what we're waiting on really is the level of consciousness to be ready. So, yes, we would like for everything just to be released on the TV today and it'll all be finished and over and done with. But we have to remember that you and me know what's going on, and other people are totally oblivious to it. And for them to hear this for the first time at any level can shock them, could completely shut them right down. It could create mental illness or breakdown even. So I think what they were saying again to me when you were talking, and they've said this to me before, is we're waiting for a level of consciousness collectively so that they know when would be a good time and how much to release and when. So that could start quite slowly at first. I think we're already in that. But as the consciousness raises up, then it could go faster. So I think it's geared mainly by what people could manage in terms of collective consciousness.
Do you think we will ever have like an EBS or a military tribunal shown on the TV? Or do you think that, again, that's another distraction? Because I do believe the white hats are also distracting us as well. I do believe that us truthers, we've become so paranoid. And I think we need to open our minds a little bit, because, you tell some of this to some people, they're so paranoid. It sounds like New World Order, for an example. But we have to really look at the bigger picture of the future, how we're evolving technologically, and what Atlantis was like, Exactly. And we're very stuck in this biblical religion matrix where really it's all down to intention and love. Doesn't matter what religion we are, that divides and conquer us. It's all about our intentions. So whatever the technology is, if the intention is clean and it's good, then that's all that matters, and we're doing it with love.
And that's another reason why they're waiting for the consciousness to rise, because then when you give the new technology to a higher consciousness, it will only be used for good and not bad. So I think that I think the timeline will start to go faster, like a snowball coming down a hill. It's just starting off, but then as it starts to roll, it gets quicker and quicker and bigger and bigger. I think we're kind of like that. But I think maybe our snowball at the moment is just at the very beginning, and it's just starting to get some momentum, especially now Twitter has been, giving out some truths recently.
Absolutely.
I've just got one thing here that I has just happened. The US Space Force chief, who's called General B. Chance Saltzman, and that's what he looks like. And he was recruited he got that position in November 2022. And he's saying that whether it's satellite-based communications, imagery, or early warning of missile launches, or positioning, navigation, and timing, the capability that space offers has demonstrated its value so much that both sides are engaged in trying to counter those capabilities and deny those advantages to the opponent. And so he's saying that the Space Force is working on it. And he said it's a top priority for the Department of Defense to protect our capabilities in space. But he's saying it will take some years. So this is the US Space Force chief talking about how they're sort of setting up the defense system, the space technology. Here he's talking about the space technology in the Ukraine, and how they're using I think the Starlink system, because he called it the satellite-based communications, imagery, early warning of missile launches, or the positioning of navigation and timing. He said the capability that space offers has demonstrated its value so much so that both sides are engaged in trying to counter those capabilities and deny those advantages to the opponent. But he said that as the Space Force, their top priority for the Department of Defense is to protect our capabilities in space. But he said the Space Force is working on that, but it will take some years. So there's more evidence that the military is working, I think, with the Starlink system.
Interesting. Well, very interesting, Michelle. I had a lovely time listening to you. Like always, it's been great. Is there anything else that you would like to say to the viewers before we finish?
I think we're all talked out. What do you think, Nick? That was a long interview today.
If Donald Trump is watching or Elon Musk comes across this video or their friends is there anything that you want to say to them?
Just keep doing the marvelous job that you're doing. We're all with you. We're all still behind everybody. We're behind Musk. Well, I am. I'm behind Musk 100%, and I'm behind Trump 100%.
Amen to that. So am I, and I think the viewers are too. Well, thank you, and it's been great, and God bless you, Michelle, and we'll speak very soon.
Yeah, take care. Bye now.